Hi there, it's Polly here. So, haha. Okay, like many of us, well, many of us my age, my early wargaming experience involved playing a lot of Ancients. And the Ancients rules that were played through the end of the 60s, all through the 70s, all through the 80s, halfway through the 90s, were the Wargames Research Group Ancients rules. These were it. Internationally, these were what you played. And they were interesting rules. However, the ones most of us grew up with were the later versions. I mean, at absolute minimum, many of us probably started with 5th edition or 4th. Some of the older coots amongst us may have seen 3rd. And these rules disappeared. They were superseded by later and more complex iterations of the rules. But the first versions that came out in 1969, they actually have some charm and interest to them. They were doing slightly different things to the later rules. The figures that were available to the players at the time were quite limited, and the year band that they were trying to work in was quite limited. So early Imperial Romans, Lorica Segmentata and all the rest of it, that was available. Ancient Britain miniatures were available. Airfix had come out with plastic sets for Romans and for Britons and so on. You could find some kind of stuff that you could make as Greeks and maybe Macedonians. And eventually you could maybe get some other things. So first edition really just covered Romans, Greeks, and, ancient Britons, and maybe if we squish those together we can make Gauls and these sorts of things. Second edition, more miniatures are starting to come out and so on. So they've expanded the year band to cover classical stuff. So they're going from like Peloponnesian War kind of period to sort of Middle Roman Empire sort of thing. But again, they're being careful what they're covering. So, we can put Parthians in there, and we can get, we can do Roman civil wars, and we can do Greeks, we can do Macedonians, and we might fit some Persians in there, etc. They didn't have to cover everything. Later iterations of these rules covered every damn thing in the universe, and of course, because they had become tournament rules, people were then combing through all of these army lists trying to find a gimmick army that would allow them to win a tournament. So rules had to start covering all this sort of stuff. Those first couple of editions have a real charm because they're simple and very direct, and they don't try to cover everything. Now, there was a supplement that came out for the second edition, which was the medieval supplement, which covered if you wanted to play these, with knights and so on, play, Middle Ages stuff. So what someone has done is taken a look at these, because these rules actually are a big influence on early Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of the rules from Dungeons and Dragons early sets are taken directly from the early WRG, literally line by line, and Chainmail as well. Took a lot of stuff straight from WRG. So someone sort of decided this is kind of part of our role-playing history, so let's pull these rules out of retirement. But they've got good bones. Let's look at playing. So, Men in Metal. Men in Metal is a clarification and redo of first and second edition Wargames Research Group Ancients rules and the long lost medieval supplement. Now these rules are like hen's teeth to find, the WRG ones. There were some historical kind of preservation of them, so I'm very grateful that these have come out. But this is a really nice piece of work because it's expanded upon them, it's cleaned them up, it's clarified them, it's done good work. And it's made a set of both ancient and medieval rules that you can play. Now, fashion. Original Wargames miniatures rules tended to be things where one figure kind of represented a guy, or there's a figure scale which said one figure definitely represents a set number of people. One figure represents 10 men, or 25 men, or 20 men, or whatever the scale was. Units were often as big as you wanted them to be. It is a collection of a bunch of figures. As you take casualties, we're going to be removing individual figures. And when you fight, the number of individual figures that are kind of in contact with the enemy is going to be governing how much damage you do. There'll be something that allows us to adjudicate second ranks fighting, or guys kind of lapping around the side. In later years, and this was indeed pioneered by Wargames Research Group, they came up with a system which we now call sort of the element-based system, where you have a wider base which has several figures, glued upon it, and that represents a bunch of people who are fighting in a similar style. So this is a block of Roman legionaries, and it might represent a couple of hundred of Roman legionaries. If I have several of those together, then that's a whole cohort. But that earlier style of lots of sort of individual figures that can be where casualties are removed as individuals, etc., that's largely vanished. It's nice to see it back again, which is another reason I'm very glad that this Men in Metal has come out. I drink to you, sir. So, what have we got? It is a pretty clear set of rules. It's from an era where it was presumed that we're all scholars here and we're all interested in having a game. So if there are grey areas, we'll just figure things out. You've got rules that basically give you points values if you wish to use them, that allow you to purchase armies. Now, troops are classified in set types with their order, how closely together they fight, which is the width of the base each individual figure has to be on. So if you are close order, like Roman infantry, shoulder to shoulder, you'll be fighting more compact. So you'll have more figures fighting in contact with someone than someone that is looser based. So they would have close order, loose order, which are often some kind of peltasts and things like that, guys who are fighting not kind of locked shield to shield because they are designed to sort of run more nimbly through rough terrain and so on. So these guys move a lot faster, but they're not fitting as many guys into the square footage. And then there's open order, which is skirmishers, who need a lot of space around them, and they're ducking and dodging behind trees and diving behind rocks, and they've got tons of space because they're not there to fight hand to hand at all. They're there to just continue a missile fire with, guys in the back ranks, flitting forward to replace the guys in the front ranks as they take a rest and reload and all this kind of jazz. So, and then there's kind of level of protection. Heavies have usually got some kind of body armor, and everyone else doesn't, but you can have extra heavies who have got sort of more extensive stuff. They've got sleeves and super heavies, guys who've got like complete coverage. They are cataphracts and all this sort of stuff. So that was the Ancients. How this differs from later versions of the WRG rules. Well, the WRG rules became very equipment based. So what you were doing was you were buying. Everyone comes with some kind of, say, sword. So you've got sidearms. But if you wanted a short spear, then you paid some extra points and you guys got a short spear. But say you're Hunnic cavalry. Hunnic light cavalry, they're light horse archers. So these are buying open order light horse, and they're archers. So I'm buying a bow. But they've also got a javelin and light spear. So I've got to buy a javelin. So You know, it's like, yeah, you're paying for all these extra bits of equipment, and those bits of equipment might give you a bonus sometimes in some circumstances. The light spear gives me a +1 if I'm fighting, you know, other open order cavalry, but it doesn't really help me against anything else unless I'm attacking, you know, skirmishers, or, you know, they were strange. What the earlier ones do was they basically said set troop types just have a attack factor against other troop types. You just cross-indexed it. So they said Roman legionaries in, say, the first version where they had very limited troop types, right? Roman legionaries, this is what damage they do against other Roman legionaries, against hoplite style guys, against loose order guys, against heavier cavalry, against skirmishing cavalry, you know. Crazy Gallic barbarians, this is the damage they do against Romans, other barbarian guys, skirmishers, etc. There weren't that many things, and they're taking into account that these individuals are going to be fighting to the best of their ability with the mix of stuff that they had. So the Romans are assumed to have pillar and sword. You know, they're going to throw their pilum at you, and then they're going to close with the sword. The Gauls, they're going to have some guys who run out of the ranks and pelt you with javelins as you approach, because they've got some crazed teenagers kind of mixed in with the ranks. And then as they get closer, they're going to either kind of lock shields and grind forward if they're sort of the Helvetican style, or if they're sort of crazier northerners, they're going to come rampaging in, yahoo! Some of them waving swords, some of them with spears, you know, to their taste. So, you know, that's all factored in there. We're not worried about the individual weapons used by each of these groups and whether they give us a specific bonus added onto this and that. So, simpler to administrate, simple to do. You make units of any damn full size that you want, just bearing in mind that really big ones are really clunky to move around on the battlefield. So, this stuff kind of figured itself out. There are grades of troops. There's sort of A grade, which are the most superb, incredibly highly trained, highly disciplined, highly motivated guys. The sworn bodyguards of a general. The incredible, you know, bodyguard troops. Crazed fanatics of some sort are often, you know, A grades. Highly, highly, highly trained people like nobles and so on are going to be B grade. So noble knights tend to be B grade. Highly trained legionaries. Roman legions would be B grade. Typical regulars or typical well-trained people are going to be C grade. They know what they're doing, they're trained, they've had some experience, etc. Guys who are a little bit less well-motivated are going to be D grade, and people who really don't want to be there, conscripted peasants, kind of skirmishers, a bit half-hearted, all that kind of thing, they're going to be an E grade. So, what these rules have done is they've taken the guts of the WRG and it's all in there. So what you do is when you play a game, you purchase your troops, make your units, you buy leadership, generals and all this sort of stuff, and you split it into different wings and so on. You can have generals in charge of different wings. These guys often have like a left wing and a right wing and a center and these sorts of things. So you have specific kind of regions of responsibility, and the habit with these older kind of 60s, 70s rules was always written orders, general written orders that you have to, the units have to obey. So you might have, say you're playing Macedonian and you are saying, right, I put a whole bunch of phalanx guys in the middle. My orders there are slowly advance against the enemy's center. I just want these guys to grind forward and kind of pin him. So attack the enemy center. Do not go near the rough terrain on either sides, under no circumstances, because I don't want my pikes mixed up there. Leave that to your peltasts. Good. I'm going to put some peltasts on either side of these guys to protect the flanks. Good. Your orders are support those phalanxes. Don't let them be flanked. You're the fast guys. Just support them and flank enemy attacks if the opportunity presents. You might write that. Then you might have some cavalry off on the wings, and you might tell one guy's, okay, your job on the left is to support that phalanx, so I need you to counterattack anything that attempts to counterattack the phalanx. However, do not keep pace with the phalanx. But you might decide, good, my right flank cavalry is going to be my actual main striking force, and that's where I've got my companions, which are my A-grade super cavalry and all this sort of stuff. Good. So their whole thing is good. You are to swing around that hill off to the right and come around and attack the enemy from the rear. That is what you're going to do. So you'd make these written plans. Now, all plans, of course, never, ever survive contact with the enemy. So as things develop, you've got to change the orders. As you see what's happening, you're going to have to change your plans. So you could reissue the orders to something. If you have a physical general in each area, the general can go attach himself to someone and he can change the orders of that. Or you can send a messenger. So you have basically a someone moves at light cavalry kind of charge speed from your general to another unit to bring it new stuff, but it might take a turn or so for him to reach it. So there will be a lag in your change of plans rippling through the army. So, it can throw you into disarray. So good pre-planning, but having leaders positioned to kind of deal with changing things on the battlefield and so on were a big part of these. So it's like, and again, we don't see that no more. So that's kind of why it's valuable to bring these old rules back. The people that made them did these things for a reason, and often what they were doing was very good. It really gave us some good play. So these rules have been done with an eye to medieval play. So they've got the original ancient stuff there, so you've got all that, but now they put in medieval stuff. That set of rules and effects for different types of troops versus different types of troops are all in there, but they put in every single medieval sort. And there's a really good set of army lists showing you what you can choose from. They've done lists for things sort of from mid-1300s through to sort of mid-1400s, say. So they've got lists in there for English and for Scots and for French and for doing 100 Years' War stuff and for Mongol invasions and for Spanish Conquista for Spanish Reconquista versus the Arabs in Spain, and Italian civic militias, and all these Byzantines and all these other cool groups are all down there with what their troops are and what the effects are. This is what knightly cavalry are like fighting against horse archers hand to hand. This is what they're like against this is heavy infantry. This is heavy infantry with pole arms. This is pike. This is their effects. This is how many ranks deep they fight, etc. So it's nice. It's quite simple. It's way easier to play than later versions of the WRG rules. So valuable, I think. And I think it's got way more flavor in a way because of the way it differentiates, the different troop types. It's not their equipment, it's the types coming more into play. So I've got armored guys, I've dismounted my knights. Good, heavy armored guys. Okay, I've got French deliberately dismounted guys who are all armed with like poleaxes and so on. That's slightly different. These are kind of, he's got more of a reach weapon and they're deployed somewhat differently. You can have troops that go impetuous on you. Like now, one of the things that keeps coming through in these rules is the reaction test, and that's what that ABCDE grading is. The first time you come within kind of reach of the enemy's heavy cavalry, you have to take a reaction test. The first time you're charged by someone, you have to take a reaction test. The first time you attempt to charge someone, you have to do a reaction test. And when you take kind of casualties, or if something shocking happens, like elephants bursting in on cavalry and those sorts of things, you have to take reaction tests. You roll, and given your class, it gives you what your guys can do under the circumstances. So there are different kind of columns for are you reacting to being charged, charging, etc. But it tells you what your options are given the roll you've made. High roll means you can do cool things, but you may get guys who hesitate to charge. They're just not that keen on it today. So or if you are charged, you may guys who have troops that just won't stand. That's it. Nope, they're going to flee. They're going to fall back a couple of turns. So again, this is one of those things where the best laid plans of mice and men may not come to be. The dice may have it against you. The troops may fight you. They're just not robots going where you've decided they're going to go. So you've got to make sure your reliable guys are in place where you need them, and the unreliable guys, well, you're just going to have to deal with them. But impetuous guys like feudal knights and so on, when they start coming within range where they can reach the enemy in a couple of turns, they have to do reaction tests. They're going to go the other. They're possibly going to go the other way. They're going to start screaming straight towards the nearest person they can smash straight into, rather than do whatever terribly cunning or patient thing you had planned for them. Hold the line, boys. Oh God, they've gone. So yeah, I like it. It's a more human game system than some of the later things that I've seen. Things get away from you. Things don't go as planned, and you have to deal with the fact that these guys have got minds of their own. I like it. So look, from a role-playing historical point of view, it's interesting to see these because you can see the bits that influenced the chainmail rules, which of course rolled over into Dungeons and Dragons. So, a historical attached there. And these are designed so that you can use them as a massed combat system for your D&D campaign, is what the designer has decided to do here. These will roll over perfectly if you want to play a D&D campaign that expands out into big military stuff. You can raise your armies, you can have at you. So that's his intent here. But also, this has resurrected some rules that have been lost in the mists since 1969. These were playable rules, relatively simple rules, easy to understand and give a damn good game. I think later versions of these rules were very playable, but with each new edition they tried to cover more and more because they expanded the period. So these things finally went from like 3000 BC to 1485 AD, the later version. So they're covering everything from, Sumerian donkey carts rumbling forward with, guys who've just decided that maybe we'll ditch the stone weapons and this copper stuff's a great idea. All the way up to Burgundian ordnance, Wars of the Roses, Ming armies with serried ranks of handgunners. They tried to be all things to all men, and in so doing kind of lost the simplicity that made them easily approachable by players. So, good rules, but they lost that accessibility to new players. They became a specialized thing that weren't so good at, introducing people to wargaming. These rules, Men in Metal, yes, they've got a lot of interest, obviously, to more experienced players, but they're also not a bad set for introducing new people to playing ancient and medieval stuff, because they're fairly simple to grasp. They give a good game, but they don't bog you down too much. Now, these older styles of games they're a little bit slower to administer than modern element style games, because when two units hit, you've got to basically decide you get given a numerical factor. Roman legions versus, barbarian infantry have a factor of 5, and I've got 12 guys in contact. I have to go to a chart which says 12 guys cross-indexed with factor 5 gives me this many casualties. And it'll tell me that's a physical number of guys killed. A dice roll gives you a plus or minus. But 15 guys are killed, say, and each figure represents 20 guys. So there's some paperwork attached. That unit's got 15 casualties on it. When it gets to 20, I remove a figure. So there's some bookkeeping involved, and you have to cross-index thing on one chart when you roll your combat. Combat's done, you're rolling basically a pair of dice, up and down dice. Which isn't too big an ask. And there's the prep of the written orders, and there's the fact that you do have to, as part of the movement and play, you have to bear in mind when things need to do those reaction tests and roll them and then look on that chart to see what the results are. So there's more interaction and more administration involved in making this stuff happen, as opposed to the modern sort of things you'll see like impetus and so forth, where pretty much everything's just done off a straight dice roll. I've got heavy infantry, it gives me a +3, I'm rolling a dice and I had +3 to it. Do I beat what you've got? Yeah, okay, I won that combat, you get pushed back 2 lengths, unless I doubled you, in which case you're destroyed. Everything comes off the dice in a modern game very, very quickly and a bit antiseptically. So they're trying to achieve different things. I think it's nice to see these back. They're available on Wargames Vault for Soddle. I'm pleased. I'm pleased to see these back and rescued. Kind of as a Wargames historian, I'm very glad someone looked at these and decided, let's resurrect this and let's get people playing them again. They deserve to be played again, and I gave it a shot. I gave it a shot because back there behind me are some of my armies still based from the good old WRG days, and it was an absolute riot to bring them out again. So, yeah, give it a try. And indeed, in this age of readily available plastic miniatures, you can actually raise some ancient armies for relatively low cost these days. It doesn't have to cost you $8,000 to do an army. You can do it on the cheap. Why not give it a try? Men in Metal. Check it out. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the reviews, by all means, hit like, hit subscribe, find me on Patreon, and hopefully I'll see you around the gaming table someday. Cheers, everyone. Bye.